everyone, and welcome to another round of 12 News Weekend. I'm Kariba Devine. Here at 12 News, we strive to bring you the very best journalism in the Valley. That is why each week we'll rewind the tape to show you some of our very best stories. Some will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some will just make you feel good. This is 12 News Weekend.
In just a few days, TikTok could face a U.S. ban if the U.S. Supreme Court chooses to uphold a law requiring TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to sell before January 19th. TikTok arguing a ban would violate the First Amendment of the Constitution.
You don't shut down a speech platform because you're worried about speech being dangerous.
In question is whether TikTok poses a threat to national security.
So are we supposed to ignore the fact that the ultimate parent is in fact subject to doing intelligence work for the Chinese government?
A ruling that would impact Valley residents who use the platform for income.
With my small business, I make money off of TikTok by going live and sharing my stickers or sharing the crochet creations that my husband makes.
Lindsay Taylor has 1.9 million followers on her channel, using it to help support her family of 7.
It's everything. It's literally everything. You know, every bill that I pay comes from TikTok. And, you know, I also have a beautiful partnership with a couple brands that I wouldn't have been able to get without TikTok.
Saying she's not concerned about it being a security risk.
I personally don't think it's a national security threat if you have politicians using it, you know, and trying to reach their constituents on the app. It doesn't seem too scary.
Valley resident Jennifer Bollock uses her TikTok channel, Tastes of AZ, to highlight small businesses and also make money.
It will hinder my earnings, my yearly earnings. It is pretty scary because there are a lot of people who do make a living on this. And it's just like, what are we going to do next?
Saying the platform allows people to connect in ways like no other channel, hoping the Supreme Court considers the people who use TikTok.
I do wish it would stay around because the community that I've even built on there has just had my back for so long and built that trust with them.
Brenda Lipinski, 12 News.
There's never a dull moment in Craig and Pamela Morris's front yard. Hogs are being slaughtered. Passenger trains whiz past school children on a playground.
Then, of course, you see the Daredevil up on the swing set up there.
Police have surrounded the local bar, looking for a 3-inch tall suspect.
There's a guy running away over there by the lumberyard.
Prior to their retirement several years ago, Craig, a firefighter, and his wife Pamela, a nurse practitioner, knew nothing about model trains or the engineering that goes into layouts.
We just kept adding every year. You know, we just started small.
What began as a simple hobby to fill their golden years has blossomed into something far more meaningful. Their front yard is an ever-evolving tiny town.
The neighbors love it, and, you know, people outside the community who have found it. We have lots and lots of visitors.
But it's not just any town. It's a replica of Haxton, a farming community of roughly 900 in northeast Colorado. There's a reason it took Pamela 10 years to build it by hand. It had to be perfect.
Every building has a story about when I was growing up.
The detailed recreation captures not just the physical structures.
That's my great-grandma and grandpa.
But the heart of her childhood.
The jewelry shop right next to the hotel is where I got my ears pierced when I was 16. The newspaper, the Haxton Harvest, my father was the newspaper editor for 26 years. My first paid job was at the theater.
The train also passes by the Long Branch Bar.
My grandpa would go there every afternoon at 3 o'clock for his beer. And if my grandma needed grandpa, she'd call my mother and say, "Can you send Pamela down to find Grandpa?"
The cars, people, and animals are all built to scale.
We went back to my hometown, we took pictures, came back, built most of the buildings of the main street.
Pamela considers herself a maintenance worker, caring for more than 600 feet of track. Her husband Craig serves as the railroad's chief engineer, managing the electrical systems that bring their tiny town to life, especially at night.
This is where it all started.
Craig has his own indoor layout.
I like the sound and how they run,
which inspired his wife to get into the hobby.
He invited me to run trains on his track, and I said, no, I'll run my own trains outside.
The Morrises try to run their trains at least once a week, but will bring out an engine anytime a neighbor's grandchildren or their own visit. They fear this hobby will die with them.
We're trying to get younger kids involved because it's engineering.
There will come a day when Pamela can no longer get down on her hands and knees to level the track.
We call it getting out of the business because people just can't do it anymore.
Until then, they still welcome people to stop by their home at 7214 East Avesta Circle in Mesa.
I just have to have something to do, so coming out here is kind of my happy place, and there's always something to do.
In Mesa, Kyle Simchuk, 12 News.
Due tonight, the final report on the U.S. Justice Department's investigation of President-elect Donald Trump shows that Arizona politicians provided key evidence. The report was released earlier today ahead of Trump's inauguration next Monday.
12 News journalist Bram Resnick has more on the report and also why Attorney General Chris Mays wants to see the investigators' files. Bram?
And Mark, Special Counsel Jack Smith wrote that he had the evidence to criminally convict Donald Trump had the case been allowed to go to trial. Trump responded that, quote, Smith was deranged and the voters have spoken. AG Chris Mays still wants to know what Smith learned about the so-called fake electors case that her office is now prosecuting.
So we have to turn the page on what happened in 2020.
We're now learning that former Governor Doug Ducey and another top Arizona Republican provided key evidence to federal prosecutors of what happened in 2020.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States.
Special Counsel Jack Smith's 174-page report is the last word on his investigation of President-elect Donald Trump. Smith's report relied on evidence from Arizona to help build a case that Trump illegally attempted to overturn the 2020 election. Despite the lack of fraud evidence, Smith's report says, Mr. Trump and others continue to pressure the Arizona speaker to overturn the election results.
For me to do that because somebody just asked me to is foreign to my very being. I will not do it.
Former Republican House Speaker Rusty Bowers testified about the Trump pressure campaign before the congressional committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. Smith's report goes on to say, Mr. Trump engaged in these efforts even though trusted state and party officials had told him from the outset that there was no evidence of fraud in the election. Then Governor Ducey was one of those state officials. The report says Ducey asked Trump for evidence of alleged fraud, but Trump never sent it. The Smith report also links Trump to Arizona's so-called fake elector scheme. Mr. Trump set the fraudulent elector plan into motion in early December, ensured it was carried out by co-conspirators, and monitored its progress. Here in Arizona, the sweeping fake electors prosecution filed 9 months ago by Democratic Attorney General Chris Mays has stalled. The new judge on the case has decided to rehear the 16 defendants' arguments made last August to dismiss the charges. If there is a trial, it could be pushed back well into next year.
And Chris Mays emailed U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland seeking Jack Smith's entire case file. Mays says it would help her prosecution and perhaps provide evidence that would assist the defendants. Garland hasn't responded yet. Bram Resnick, 12 News.
Right now, the Palisades fire, that is still only 11% contained.
Yeah, and the winds are expected to be horrible today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. So far, at least 24 people have died, with more than 150,000 under evacuation orders as the death toll continues to rise. A red flag warning has been issued for parts of Southern California through Wednesday. We've got those Santa Ana winds that are back. Also, low humidity persists. More than 37,000 acres have burned, with fire officials saying at least 10,000 structures have been destroyed. JP Morgan Chase estimates insured losses from the crisis top $20 billion. Another interesting thing that I actually just read an update, close to 70 people have been arrested for arson and for
looting and yeah, a lot of
all right, these wildfires have been fueled by unusually powerful winds, which we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's why I want to bring in meteorologist Ginger Jeffries back again, who you actually spoke with a fire chief in Southern California about this problem and why it is making it nearly impossible for fire crews to get a hold of these.
Yeah, Chief Fennessy, I've known him for years, work in San Diego side by side with him, just incredible. Southern California, they are dealing with extreme weather patterns, of course, sparking continued fire concerns. But after the flames are out, understand, the danger it's not over. Fires leave something called a burn scar. In 2018, winter storms brought major flooding and triggered deadly mudslides in Montecito. That's near Santa Barbara, which another area that was hit by the wildfires. I spoke to the chief of the Orange County Fire Authority, who told me about his fears of what he called weather whiplash and the chance of incoming rain causing even more devastation to these hard-hit communities.
So when, the rains do come, we've got to pray that they're not sustained, in one place, because we're going to see mud flow, maybe like we've never seen. It's quite possible that the loss of life could be greater as a result of floods and mudslides than the fire was. And that's absolutely a concern.
So understand how these burn scars work is they're very waxy, and it basically forms this kind of shelf, and it doesn't go too deep. So as soon as the water gets underneath it, that whole wall of mud comes down. And again, Montecito, that's my husband's hometown.
That's one of the most horrific stories I think I've ever reported, the Montecito mudslides, 2018, right?
2018, 23 dead. And Chief Fennessy is saying that he thinks the deadly possibilities from this, simply because of the amount of terrain we're talking about. And, in Altadena, that's the steepest terrain he's ever seen in his 40-year career. And that's where he grew up. His school was burned down. I mean, he went there, his elementary school burned down. So, Fennessy is just very familiar with it. And again, to hear his cause for alarm as far as what's going to happen with the mudslides, they have to unfortunately just not allow people back there until
the
terrain is at least stable.
I think it's ironic, given that the hills of California and the terrain is part of what makes it so iconic, and sadly could be one of the biggest dangers to it.
Right, and especially with those winds, they were blowing onshore over the weekend, so the fire was getting blown back on itself. Well, now with those Santa Anas, it's just going to fuel, and their big concern is if it's going to crest, if it's going to make it over the mountains and then run down the other side, because there's just ample fuel for it to run through.
Oh, geez.
We're going to keep following this for you guys, of course.
It's not my debt. So I don't know if this has to do with fraud, credit fraud, or what. And it's not just me. There's other people. Other people need to know how to fight them. And I'd love to be able to do that.
So joining us now for the backstory is 12 News journalist Katie Wilcox. Katie, she was talking about, other people fighting back, and, how widespread are these lawsuits?
So what we know right now is that as many as 1 in 5 people actually have debt in collections, and a good number of those are going to end up in lawsuits. So the latest research that I've been looking at shows between 2 and 4 million debt collection lawsuits are filed every single year. And these are over pretty small claims. A lot of these are going to be between $1,500 to $2,000. Ann Munoz was sued over $2,700. Right, so they're not that huge, so it's hard to get an attorney, it's hard to get representation, and usually that's going to end up as a win for the debt collector.
Yeah, when you're, when you're in debt $2,700 or so, it's going to cost thousands just to, get an attorney for all the fees and everything like that.
It absolutely can, and we did speak to a researcher who has been looking at this across the country. And
our best estimate around the country is somewhere between 60 and 70% of all of these lawsuits end in a default judgment. And typically that's an automatic win for the plaintiff, and typically that's an automatic win with no judicial review of the case or the sort of validity of the case.
Okay, so when he's talking about those staggering numbers, what can someone do if they're being sued by a debt collector?
So what you're supposed to do is absolutely respond. I think a lot of people originally look at this and think that this could be a scam. It could be fraud. Maybe they don't recognize the name of this debt collector. But you need to respond to these and take it seriously, because it could otherwise result in that kind of automatic, or what we were talking about, those default judgments. But the researchers that we talked to also want to see better laws across the country. They want to see state lawmakers step up, and the state courts themselves be able to really review these cases and verify the legitimacy and authenticity.
Yeah, it's not just the victim's fight. Everybody really has to come together for all of this.
They're seeing a lot of problems in these cases. Obviously, that company has already been fined millions of dollars for violating consumer rights. So this is an issue that should be brought to the attention not only of the courts, but of the state legislature.
All right, Katie, thank you so much.
Katie Hobbs, governor of the state of Arizona.
Katie Hobbs' Arizona Promise agenda starts at home.
The promise that through hard work and perseverance,
you can build a good life for yourself and your family.
The Democratic governor wants to boost housing affordability, cut the cost of childcare, create paths to well-paying careers, and protect rural water supplies. The most urgent item on Hobbs' agenda is extending Prop 123. The $300 million a year funding stream for K-12 schools must be updated by the legislature and approved by voters before it expires in June.
Renewing it is essential.
But Republicans are in no hurry to renew Prop 123. They have different ideas than Hobbs.
We don't want to rush anything. We want to do things right. And we want to ensure that parents are at the table and they're the number ones when it comes to parental choice as well.
Another rift between Hobbs and Republicans. Border security means different things.
We must remain vigilant in protecting Arizonans from the cartels who seek to do us harm.
For Hobbs, border security means protecting Arizonans from the deadly scourge of fentanyl.
We'll work directly with Tom Homan and President Trump's administration and President Trump himself to make sure that we deport as many of the illegal criminals as possible.
To Republicans, border security makes Arizona a full partner in Donald Trump's plan for mass deportations.
And the border issue in Arizona could come into clearer focus when Donald Trump is inaugurated a week from today. According to news reports, he's expected to issue about 100 executive orders, many of them tied to immigration. Mark Grebe.
Bram, the governor told you last week when you sat down with her that she would take on the school voucher program. What is she proposing?
She wants to put guardrails on a program that really has no accountability. She would start with income limits on families that could receive vouchers because, as we've seen, many of them are going to higher income families getting $7,000 a year to pay for private school that they might not need. The problem there is she might run into Prop 123. It appears Republicans are going to use protecting school vouchers, school choice as a bargaining chip if they're going to go along with extending Prop 123.
All right, Bram, thank you.
Yeah, you've heard the argument that you get what you pay for. Even state lawmakers agree the low salary of $24,000 a year limits who can serve. Now voters might get the chance to approve a long overdue pay raise.
Ordinary people need not apply.
Republican State Senator John Kavanaugh is one of several retirees at the Capitol.
With this current salary structure, you wouldn't be able to do it financially.
The 90 members of the Arizona legislature are representing the people for a salary that's stuck in the last century.
It's actually a big barrier for working class people and middle class people to run for office.
Voters last approved a pay raise in 1998 to $24,000 a year. If that paycheck had kept up with inflation, lawmakers would be taking home more than $46,000 a year today. Democratic Minority Leader Oscar de los Santos knows voters might not be sympathetic.
People are hurting. Childcare costs are exploding, housing costs are exploding, healthcare costs are exploding. So the idea of giving politicians a raise is probably not very popular.
It's also not possible. The state commission that's supposed to recommend raises to voters is vacant, so Kavanaugh has a workaround.
People believe that they should get reasonable compensation for their labors, so I think it's only fair.
His bill would ask voters to approve an automatic annual salary adjustment equal to the inflation rate. It's not a big bump, but
I'll take what I can get if the voters give it.
If the pay raise were in effect right now, Arizona lawmakers would get a $650 a year raise. The bill would give voters a say on their pay in the 2026 election. And by the way, the new legislative session starts on Monday with Governor Katie Hobbs' State of the State speech. Bram Resnick, 12 News.
All right, Bram, thank you.
In other news that we're tracking at 4 o'clock, many of us big spenders this past holiday season, and it is time, unfortunately, to tackle that existing debt so that we don't drag it into this brand new year with us. Here with us in studio is Angelica Prescott, financial expert. So, Angelica, this really busts down into 4 basic concepts.
It does.
Yes. So let's first do the holiday damage assessment. How do we go through that?
First of all, it needs to be a no judgment zone. All right, so let's look back and see what really happened in December. Did we go overboard or did we not? And when we assess it, figure out what are the triggers that made us go overboard, because easily on record, about over 50 to 75% of the people in America U.S. went overboard by at least 20% more than they were intending to spend and have incurred some debt because of it.
And so there's actually a systematic way that we can tackle that first step.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
The first thing you need to do is let's have this month, January, be the only essentials month. Okay.
Oh, I like that. The no spend challenge.
The no spend challenge.
Okay.
Exactly. Just do what you need to do. And that way we are able to have some of that savings start working towards the debts that we have. And let's attack it by looking at what's charging us the most interest first. So we hit those first and make a huge dent on it if possible this month.
I like what you had said kind of in our email exchanges that it's a detox by committing to that no spend. So it really is just your essentials.
Just the essentials, just for this month. It doesn't have to be for the rest of the year, but it allows for us to really be able to take the time to see what really, really is necessary. And once you see that, some things you can cut off, some things you know you need to have, but without doing that essential, you never really get to track it.
Sure. And then I know what's important on this list is goal setting for your financial fitness.
Yes.
And what exactly is that? It can be done year round too.
Absolutely. Any month you want to start this, I think this is a great month to do
Sure.
it, just to set it up for the whole year. But let's see, what is it that you really want to be able to do? What things don't you want to cut off? Especially once you start doing that essentials needs this month. What things, maybe a vacation in July, maybe there's something you want to do in December. We can plan for that and look at what we need to do to plan for it step by step.
I love that. I'm already planning ahead to something in May, and it's like just start chipping away now, which actually takes us to our last basic concept, which is the Holiday Head Start Fund. Could you elaborate for our viewers who are like just scratching their heads like, how do I even plan for this Christmas?
So we know somehow we'll still love some people this next December coming up. So instead of it being, oh my God, I forgot to get something from my in-laws, et cetera, or we have a trip we have to do, maybe if you just put a little bit of money towards that account, that goal every single month, maybe it's $50, but if you keep adding that up and any leftovers you have after the month is done, you can put into those accounts and let that grow for you. So no credit cards are needed. We already have the money there.
Yes, and we know that those are the high interest situations that we're talking about with number one. So just any final steps? I know we also talked about maybe little small automations that can go into that specific holiday jar.
Absolutely.
Versus, you know, the necessities you think you want in January.
Well, I think honestly, even as your birthdays come into this year, maybe we can put some of the birthday money towards what we're going to spend for the holidays as well. Find creative ways to keep this a very happy point. And who knows, you might have a side hustle that comes up just to make some more money for your goals.
Exactly. And keep stashing it away. Little goes a long way. Angelica Prescott, thank you for coming in.
Love being here.
On this Money Saving Monday. All right, Tran, we'll send it over to you. Start putting it in the jar, girl.
Oh, I am.
Look, it is not easy to get to Horseshoe Dam, but if you make it, you're rewarded with a chance to walk under that. It doesn't really look like it should be here. Tons of water, moss, whirlpools. But it's a secret waterfall. Secret because it's hard to get to and because it only flows a couple of times a year, maybe.
Pretty neat. We've never been out here. We've been here our whole lives.
Pretty from the outside. Another world inside. A tunnel of water, mist, and the roar of thousands of gallons of water rushing by.
We've heard about this every year. They let it out, and we haven't come seen it yet.
I don't have my hood up because it's cold. I have my hood up because it's wet. It's very wet. There's a lot of water coming down underneath this waterfall, and it only happens when they release water from the dam that's right above you.
The water comes from Horseshoe Lake, which is managed by Salt River Project. And SRP only lets water out of the lake a couple times a year when there's a surplus of it. And this built-in walkway that usually goes along a dry dam becomes a tunnel. It is unbelievably loud under here, but this is something that you just can't do almost anywhere else in Arizona. Walk this far under a flowing waterfall.
Yeah, absolutely. Walking through that, it's amazing to hear the roar and all the water falling.
Yeah, you can't hear anything when you're back there.
The water goes over the edge and continues on down the Verde River.
And walk behind the waterfall.
Horseshoe Dam became kind of TikTok famous a year ago. Videos like this and this started popping up and getting tons of likes. But even social media fame didn't really make the waterfall famous.
I didn't even know it really existed till like almost a year ago.
Horseshoe Dam still might be a bit of a secret because it takes about 90 minutes to get here. Half of that on a rough and bumpy dirt road. Right now it's only flowing through the end of January, but if you can find it and get here at the right time.
Well, it certainly is a very nice, unexpected pleasure.
At Horseshoe Dam, William Pitts, 12 News.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, you can catch 12 News Weekend on Saturdays and Sundays on our YouTube channel and our streaming app, 12 News Plus. I'm Kariba Devine. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend.